Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Friday, June the 9th, 2023, our last day of looking at our Romans reading from last Sunday, Romans 12, 1 through 8. We're going to take a look at the Matthew 16, our gospel, last Sunday. We're going to look at that tomorrow on Saturday. But we're up to the last three verses here, verses 6, 7, and 8 in Romans 12, where Paul writes, "We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness." Story is told about a preacher who had a children's sermon, and he called the kids up front and he talked about all the ingredients needed to make up a church, talking about these gifts that we've come to know as spiritual gifts. Paul talks a little bit more in 1 Corinthians 12 about this as well. So he wanted to talk about this with his kids and talk about the church and all the different ingredients, and he was using a chocolate chip cookie as an example, and explained to the children that as with a cookie that requires ingredients such as sugar and eggs, the churches also needed ingredients, people, their gifts, to make up the congregation. And then he held the cookie up high and he said, well, if I took the chocolate chips out of this cookie, what would I have? And there was like a little bit of silence. And finally, a little 6-year-old girl raised her hand and said, 6 less grams of fat. Well, literally true, but that's not the point he was getting at. The point here that Paul makes is that all of us, every Christian, has at least one spiritual gift for the benefit of the entire church, the entire body of Christ. Again, yesterday we talked about it, there's many members, one body. We all have gifts. Some might have more than one, but we all have at least one, and we are dependent upon each other. Again, Paul, right, we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. It's a gift, and it was given for the common good. But they're from God. Again, a gift of God's grace means that it comes from God. It's not anything about our own will. And then this whole idea that we all have gifts, we all have something to contribute. In 17th century Italy, in the town of Cremona, there lived a young boy named Antonio. Antonio was often sad because he lived in a town that was famous for its music, but he had neither the talent for singing nor for playing an instrument. Antonio's voice was high and squeaky, and as a result, he was not welcomed into the renowned Cremona's boys' choir. When he tried to take violin lessons, his feeble efforts were so irritating that the neighbors persuaded his parents to make him stop. And yet Antonio still wanted to make music. Well, his friends used to tease him, in fact, because it seemed that his only talent was whittling. But still, he refused to give up his dream of making beautiful music. Well, one day, he learned that a world-famous violin maker named Amati also lived in Cremona, and so the very next morning, Antonio went to visit this master craftsman and begged to serve as his apprentice. And so for many years then, he studied and worked at the master's feet. Antonio's boyhood knack for whittling grew into an unrivaled skill in carving, and his hobby slowly became his craft. Patiently, he fashioned many violins, striving each time to make the next one better and more beautiful than the last. When Antonio finally died, he left over 1,500 violins, each one bearing the name of its creator, Antonio Stradivarius. Perhaps you don't recognize this name today. Stradivarius is the most sought-after violin in the world. The clarity of tone, the careful craftsmanship have remained unsurpassed down through the centuries. Over 300 years later, Antonio's violins now sell for more than $100,000 each. Antonio Stradivarius could neither sing nor play, but he discovered the gift that God had given to him, and he found a way to make his dream of beautiful music come true. And his priceless violins are still making beautiful music even today. And so also it is then in the church. Again, spiritual gifts, that's what we're calling these, are given to everybody, not just spiritual leaders. As Paul talks and has his discussion of this same subject in 1 Corinthians, he writes, "Concerning spiritual gifts, brothers and sisters, I do not want you to be uninformed. Now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit, And there are varieties of service, but the same Lord. There are a variety of activities, but it's the same God who activates all of them in everyone. We've all been given a gift to share. So just as the body is made up of different parts, different members, and they're all interdependent, so it is with the gifts that we've been given as well. No one possesses all the gifts. Everyone possesses at least one, and it's only by sharing those gifts and working together that not only the body works, but also uh, the gifts empower, really, and advance God's purposes and God's mission and God's will in the world. So we're going to leave off there, finishing up here in Romans 12. And tomorrow we're going to take a look at Matthew 16 real quickly. Until then, take care. Have a great day. We'll see you then. Bye.